reduce the cost of prescription drugs for Americans. Madam President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The Senator from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Madam President, and I thank the gentleman for yielding. I'm pleased as well that the Senate is moving this week to consider the FDA Safety and Innovation Act, very important piece of legislation that will help ensure Americans have access to safe, innovative medical treatments by giving the FDA the resources it needs to review new products as safely and as quickly as possible, while also giving the industry the certainty it needs to continue investing in new research. As I travel around Massachusetts, the #1 issue I find is that lack of regulatory certainty and sometimes tax certainty, so this is certainly a step in the right direction. And I'm pleased that this legislation takes many steps to strengthen the medical innovation industry in the United States. I've championed one such provision with Senators McCain and Casey that will smooth the regulatory path that I referenced earlier for new moderate-risk medical devices. The underlying bill before us needs to be passed as quickly as possible to guarantee that regulatory certainty at the FDA for the industry and its stakeholders. However, I'm disappointed that the Senate has not yet taken time to address the key area of concern related to this bill, and that's the new medical device excise tax. The new 2.3% tax on medical device sales that was imposed in the federal health care law will cost our economy thousands of jobs and limit Americans' access to the most groundbreaking, state-of-the-art medical devices, which many people need. For the past 18 months, I've been pushing for the Senate to consider a medical device tax repeal bill that I introduced back in February of 2011, one of the first bills that I introduced. And today, I, along with others, will be introducing an amendment to repeal this job-killing tax, a tax which will, in fact, drive up the cost of health care and care for patients and make our workers and our companies less competitive. I can tell you in Massachusetts we have over 400 medical device companies. We're an innovative state. We have the ability to have companies like this in Massachusetts employing nearly 25,000 workers and contributing over $4 billion to our economy, and that is obviously a substantial industry in Massachusetts, and it affects each and every person throughout this country indirectly. If it goes into effect next year, this harmful tax will put American workers at a competitive disadvantage and chase jobs overseas. There's already companies been over the last year and a half looking overseas, already shifting their strategy. And where's that money coming from? Where's that 2.3% tax? In some instances represents the entire net profit for some of these young companies in Massachusetts and throughout the country. It will potentially cost 43,000 jobs across the country with a loss of $3.5 billion in wages. And I'm not quite sure how that makes sense in anybody's book. Massachusetts alone is expected to lose over 2,600 jobs as a direct result of this tax, and up to 10% of our entire medical device manufacturing workforce will be affected. Bottom line is we just can't have this kind of job loss in a sector of our economy when we're still struggling. We are, as I said, an innovative state. We do have over 400 medical device companies in Massachusetts. We do generate a tremendous amount of revenue in the billions of dollars. So where is this tax going to come from? Is it coming from R&D? Is it going to come from growth, expansion, hiring, firing? Where is it coming from? No one seems to know. I can tell you, though, that the Massachusetts companies and companies throughout the United States are deeply, deeply concerned about this. And I find it surprising and disappointing that there is not a consensus to repeal the medical device tax, which will affect states across this great country. And whether it's on a bill or a standalone bill, we need to get it done, and we need to get it done like we did in a truly bipartisan, bicameral manner on the 3% withholding, the 1099 fix, the Hire a Hero Veterans Bill, the Insider Trading Bill. We have worked together truly in bipartisan manner to get things done. It matters a great deal to Massachusetts, and it should concern every member of this body. Madam Chair, I thank you, and I doubt the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll. Mr. Kakao. senator from Illinois.
Ask consent the quorum call be suspended.
Without objection.
Ask consent to speak as if in morning business.
Without objection.
Come to think of it, I withdraw that. It's my understanding that we are on the motion to proceed on the Food and Drug Administration bill.
That is correct.
My statement relates to that bill, so I will speak as part of that. Madam President, dietary supplements have become a common health aid in medicine cabinets all across America. More than half of us in America use dietary supplements, including this senator who, for a variety of reasons, takes a multivitamin tablet every morning. In spite of their popularity, many people would be surprised to learn that the Food and Drug Administration doesn't know how many dietary supplements are actually being sold in the United States. Most people don't know that if a dietary supplement ingredient presented serious health concerns, the Food and Drug Administration doesn't have the information to track down products containing the harmful ingredient. We assume if it's for sale in America, some government agency has taken a close look to make sure that that product is safe and that we know what's inside of it and that it wouldn't harm a customer, an innocent customer. It turns out that may be true when it comes to prescription drugs and over-the-counter drugs, but the dietary supplement world is a much, much different world with minimal regulation. I have an amendment which I'll be offering to ensure that the Food and Drug Administration has the information it needs to respond quickly and efficiently when safety concerns arise concerning dietary supplements. This amendment would require dietary supplement manufacturers to give the Food and Drug Administration the name of each supplement they produce, along with a description, a list of ingredients, and a copy of the label. It's not an onerous requirement. But for the first time, the Food and Drug Administration would literally have a catalog of all the dietary supplements being sold to Americans all across the nation. Now, with this information, the FDA is better equipped to protect consumers' health and to work with manufacturers to address any problems if they arise. A 2009 report by the Government Accountability Office found that the Food and Drug Administration is limited in its ability to respond to safety concerns because dietary supplement manufacturers don't always provide basic information, like product names or lists of ingredients. This common sense amendment that I'm offering is supported by the Consumers Union, and it would give the Food and Drug Administration basic information it needs to protect the public. Trust me, it will be opposed by certain interest groups. But I heard opposition almost 10 years ago when I introduced a bill to require dietary supplement manufacturers to report serious adverse events like hospitalizations or death to the FDA. The need for mandatory reporting of adverse events was demonstrated by injuries and death across the country caused by popular and dangerous dietary ingredients like ephedra before it was banned in the United States in 2004. One of the victims was 16-year-old Sean Riggins from Lincoln, Illinois, 30 miles from where I live in downstate Illinois. He died in September 2002, a high school student, from a heart attack after he took something called Yellow Jackets. It was supposed to be an energy boost, and he was headed off to play football. It contained ephedra, and it killed him. Shortly before his death, Metabolife, the largest manufacturer of supplements containing ephedra, claimed to the public that they had no ephedra-related adverse event reports, period. However, a lawsuit was filed, and they were required under that lawsuit to disclose their records. In October of 2002, under pressure, Metabolife gave FDA over 13,000 ephedra-related adverse event reports. People had taken their substances with ephedra, got sick, or worse. In 2006, I worked with Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah and Tom Harkin of Iowa to pass the Dietary Supplement and Non-Prescription Drug Consumer Protection Act, which mandates reporting of adverse events to the Food and Drug Administration. It stands to reason. If there's a drug for sale in the United States, dietary supplement in this case, for sale in the United States, causes a problem, shouldn't we know about it? If it's causing a problem in a lot of different places, if the Food and Drug Administration, through these reports, will discover it. Since the law took effect in 2007, dietary supplement adverse event reports submitted to the FDA have increased 7-fold, from 368 in 2007 to 2,473 in 2011. The FDA is using these reports as part of a surveillance system to signal potential safety issues and in some cases take regulatory action. Mandatory reporting of adverse events was an important step to protect consumer safety, but we need to do more to ensure the FDA and consumers have the information they need. Madam President, the sad reality of this amendment and this issue is that it takes a tragedy to catch our attention. Someone has to be seriously hurt or worse before members of Congress and others will take notice and do something. I recently learned about the tragic death of this beautiful young 14-year-old girl. Her name was Anise Fournier from Maryland. Anise was an honor student. She liked to read vampire novels. She watched chick flicks with her mom and had a passion for writing. Last December, her life was cut short when she went into cardiac arrest. What caused it? Caffeine toxicity. She drank 2 24-ounce Monster energy drinks in less than 24 hours, and it took her life. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that adolescents, like 14-year-old Anise, consume no more than 100 milligrams of caffeine every day. But in less than 24 hours, Anise had consumed 480 milligrams of caffeine. That's the equivalent to 14 12-ounce sodas with ordinary caffeine content. But of course, she did it with 2 drinks, Monster energy drinks. A recent report by SAMHSA shows that energy drinks pose potentially serious health risks. I might say that in the gallery today, as I'm speaking, are members of Anise's family. We want to join them in mourning her loss and hope that her life will at least give us notice that there are things we can do to spare other families from the grief that their family has gone through. Wendy Crossland is her mom. Her sister Jade is here, her grandfather Dick, and her grandmother Faith. They've come here today because they are hoping that the Senate will hear about this amendment and that we can take it up and pass it. Her case is not alone. Emergency room visits due to energy drinks have increased tenfold between 2005 and 2009, from 1,128 in 2005 to 13,114 ER visits in 2009. Energy drinks target kids with flashy ads and names, Monster, Rockstar, 5-hour energy drink. But there are serious concerns about the high levels of caffeine in these beverages and herbal ingredients that act as stimulants and contain even additional caffeine. The FDA, now this is the interesting thing, if you walked in, as I have, to an ordinary gas station, whether it's in New Hampshire or in Illinois, and you see the cooler there with the drinks in it, and then you'll see some others on counters, you might assume, well, they're all subject to the same level of regulation, but it's not true. If you're talking about ordinary beverages, sodas, they're characterized as food, and they are subject to certain limitations by the FDA. However, if you look at the fine print, and you better look closely because it's very tiny, you may find that this is being characterized and described as a dietary supplement. By putting those 2 words on the label, they escape regulation. So we limit the caffeine in an ordinary soda pop, for example, cola, but when it comes to the dietary supplement side of the story, there are no limitations. That's why this poor young lady, this poor young girl, was a victim because of the huge amount of caffeine that was consumed in the name of a dietary supplement. The FDA has the authority to regulate caffeine levels in beverages and to require beverage manufacturers to prove the additives they put inside that can or bottle are safe. But most energy drinks avoid FDA oversight by calling their products dietary supplements. I defy you to walk into a store and to look at that case of all the things that you can buy and pick out the ones that are regulated by the FDA and those that aren't. You're going to have to study long and hard and look closely at the labels to figure it out. Now, is that fair to consumers? Is it fair to families and parents that we don't have even basic oversight and regulation over products that can literally harm or take the life of a beautiful young girl like this? The amendment I'm offering would ensure that the FDA knows about all of the energy drinks being sold in the United States and may provide information about ingredients that could help the agency address potential safety concerns. Now, most dietary supplements available today for sale are safe and are used by millions of Americans as part of a healthy lifestyle. Some ingredients may be safe for the general population, but may be risky for kids, pregnant women, or people with a heart condition, or taking certain prescription drugs. Furthermore, in spite of the many responsible dietary supplement companies, sadly, there is a murky market space out there where some bad actors are selling potentially dangerous products, some of them imported into the United States, which literally do not even disclose their ingredients in an accurate way. This amendment will take an important step to protect public health by requiring dietary supplement manufacturers to submit basic information to the FDA that would help the agency identify safety issues and respond more quickly. No one wants to learn of the death of another 16-year-old who loved to play football, or of this wonderful young 14-year-old girl who loved watching movies with her mom. We can help prevent these tragedies by requiring that better information is reported to the FDA when these dietary supplements go on the market. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Georgia.
Madam President, as a member of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee, I rise for a brief speech, but I want to begin that speech by thanking Chairman Harkin, Ranking Member Enzi, the entire staff of the Health Committee, and my staff, Francie Pastor, who have helped so much on this legislation, which is so important to the American people. This is a chance where we have a bipartisan effort in the United States Senate to do something constructive and meaningful, and I commend both of them on their work. There are component parts of this legislation I want to illuminate for just a second because I had a lot to do with them because they're very important. One deals with third-party logistics providers. As the Chair is aware and as the Senate's aware, we have a placeholder in the Manager's Amendment for third-party providers and logistical providers with track and trace. Track and trace is the mechanism of tracking the drug from its origin and tracing it all through the system to the individual that's using the drug to make sure we have safety and security. But there are third-party logistics carriers who deliver an awful lot of content in the United States, like FedEx and like UPS, who operate in all 50 states. And we ought to have a 50-state seamless standard in terms of third-party delivery, rather than 50 individual states all having regulatory authority. So my first message today to send to the conferees when the Conference Committee is ultimately reported is to take this placeholder on these third-party logistics providers and make sure in the track and trace legislation we provide a seamless national policy for the delivery of pharmaceuticals. It's very important to our country, and it's very important to the pharmaceutical industry, and mostly it's very important to those of us who consume those pharmaceuticals. Secondly, there is another provision called the Medical Gas Safety Act, which was included in this legislation, and I am very grateful that the managers of the legislation agreed to put it in the bill because it's equally important for our people in this country. But I want to make sure one thing is underlined. Medical gases are critically important to sustain life. Gases like oxygen, gases like nitrous oxide, which is you call laughing gas by some, sometimes use it to sedate individuals. But I want to make sure that as we go through this process that we have a system under which medical gases that have stood the test of time remain available through medical use, and brand new medical products that have never been through the testing time go through an appropriate FDA review, which is what the original act, the Medical Gas Safety Act, included and wanted to be included in this legislation. Madam President, I would ask unanimous consent that the statement both on medical gas and the statement on third-party logistical providers be included in its totality for the record.
Without objection.
And I commend the Chairman and the Ranking Member again on their service and the fine work on the FDA bill. And I yield back and suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander. Ms. Ayotte.
President. Wow.
Mr. President, I ask for the proceedings on the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask consent that my statement I'm about to give appear as if in morning business, but not connected to the motion at hand.
Without objection.
Mr. President, last week our nation lost one of its most determined and courageous advocates for the rights of people with disabilities, Katie Beckett. I'm proud to say that Katie was a native Iowan. She was born in March of 1978 and 5 months later contracted viral encephalitis. She subsequently had a seizure and went into a coma for 10 days. This illness caused nerve damage to her brain, which left her paralyzed and unable to breathe on her own. Katie received a tracheotomy, was placed on a ventilator, was fed using a tube. Initially, after coming out of the coma, she could not move at all. Slowly, much of the paralysis receded, but she was not able to breathe on her own until she was 2 years of age. During that time, she lived in a pediatric intensive care unit. Her family naturally wanted her out of the hospital and home where they could care, support, and love her. By her third birthday, Katie's private insurance had reached its $1 million cap, and she began to receive Medicaid support for her health care. Doctors eventually determined that she could leave the hospital with proper supports at home. However, here's the catch. Medicaid refused to pay for such care, even though it would cost 1/6 as much as hospital care. Medicaid would pay for institutional care, but not in her own home. She could only receive care in a hospital or nursing home and get it covered. So Katie's predicament began to receive attention, thanks to the intervention of many people, including then Congressman Tom Talkey, who was Katie's congressman at that time, who began to speak out about this and who brought it to the attention of then President Ronald Reagan and many in Congress. And because of that, President Reagan spoke out about this, and a new home and community-based waiver was created to allow children in Katie's situation to receive their care at home rather than in hospitals. This new program was called the Katie Beckett Waiver. At the time, it was thought the program would benefit only a few hundred children. However, since 1982, over 500,000 children have benefited from the Katie Beckett waiver, including 11,000 in Iowa. Katie and her family were true pioneers in changing the institutional bias in Medicaid and permitting children with significant disabilities to receive their supports and services in their own homes rather than in a hospital, a nursing home, or other institutional setting. So under the new program, Katie went home almost 3 full years after she was admitted. At that time, she was able to be off her ventilator for 6 hours a day. So what happened after her discharge? Well, she started school. While her fellow students considered her different because of her medical condition, she never needed special education services. At an early age, she became a passionate advocate for home and community-based care. While still in middle and high school, she testified before Congress, met with governors, and, as I said, even the President of the United States. She served as an intern at Exceptional Parent magazine, living in Boston. That summer, between her junior and senior year of high school, Katie learned to manage her own medical care, directing the nurses who provided her treatments and managed her ventilator. Katie considered advocacy to be her vocation and chosen path, in particular helping to raise the consciousness of other young people about disability issues. Even though she found this work rewarding, she sometimes felt uncomfortable in those pre-ADA days, as we say, pre-Americans with Disability Act days, to be singled out because of her disability. All she really wanted was, as she put it, quote, to fit in and just be normal, end quote. Her first job was at a music store at a local mall. She got the job as any other young person would by virtue of her knowledge and interest in music. But, as Katie said, quote, advocacy is in my blood and my soul. So she looked for work that would allow her to help other people. She'd been volunteering at the local YWCA in the second-hand shop that supported the only homeless shelter for women and children in eastern Iowa, and was then hired for the receptionist job at the Y. But the job title receptionist did not begin to describe her true job responsibilities. Katie was the first responder to sexual assault and domestic violence victims. She helped with the neutral exchange program, where divorced or separated parents could drop off their children without having to encounter each other. She learned to quickly assess the needs of others and to help connect them to appropriate services and supports. She also helped with the supervised visitation program and was soon promoted to be the assistant to the supervisor of that program. Later, Katie worked with her mother, Julie Beckett, to help establish the Kids as Self-Advocates Network, a group designed to help children and youth with significant medical needs to speak up for their own care and support. Working through Family Voices, another organization spearheaded by Julie Beckett, Katie helped to teach hundreds of young people how to advocate for their own health care. In addition, she served as a Senate appointee on the Ticket to Work and the Work Incentives Advisory Panel, which provided advice to the Social Security Administration, the President, and Congress on work incentives, employment, and other issues facing people with disabilities. Katie Beckett graduated from Mount Mercy College in Cedar Rapids, Iowa in 2001. She later took writing courses at nearby Kirkwood Community College. She was close to completing a novel. A series of illnesses obliged her to put off returning to college and take the classes necessary to become a teacher. Katie treasured the freedom to engage in the kinds of activities that so many of us take for granted, including eating at Red Lobster, going to the shopping mall, and recently moving into her own apartment. Katie will be greatly missed by so many people all across America. She will be remembered for her determined advocacy and that of her family, which has changed countless lives for the better. She inspired a whole generation of young people with disabilities by showing that an ordinary person can accomplish extraordinary things through great spirit, determination, and persistence. Mr. President, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. once said, "Life's most urgent and persistent question is, what are you doing for others?" During her memorable but very short lifetime, Katie answered that question in powerful ways, as an agent for change and a determined advocate. Her living legacy is the program that bears her name, the Katie Beckett Waiver, which will continue to improve the lives of children and young people with disabilities far into the future. Mr. President, I see my colleague from Iowa here who has also been a friend of the Becketts, has been very supportive of Katie and all of her work, and Julie Beckett, and this has truly been a bipartisan, bicameral support for this wonderful, wonderful family. Katie's funeral is this Friday. We're all going to miss her. As I said, when you met Katie Beckett, you were inspired to do more than you thought you could do. She was a wonderful, wonderful person. And it's just tragic that her life came to such a short close just last week. But she's going to be remembered, and as I said, she changed so many lives in this country, so many lives for the better. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Iowa.
I thank my colleague from Iowa for his very nice